investment decisions.
And with us today, the legendary investor, Jim Rogers. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm delighted to be here, Elijah and James. Good morning.
All right. Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss is the Chinese economy, because back in this last year, 2018, we saw the slowest growth we've seen since 1990. What is your perspective on the economy in China, and why do you think the growth slowed in 2018?
Well, first of all, any economy that's grown rapidly for 29 years, or 28 years, deserves to slow down. And what's remarkable is that it hasn't slowed down before and more. It is slowing, fortunately for China and fortunately for the world, because anything that goes straight up without a pause is going to have someday. The situation, as I read it, well, you know what's happening with Trump, you know what's happening with the trade war and things of that sort. But also China has built up a lot of debt in the last decade or so. And the government is now insisting or demanding and forcing people to start reducing their debt. And when you go from adding debt to reducing debt, you're obviously going to have a slowdown. That's my assessment. I'm sure there are other things going on as well.
Hey, Jim, what are your thoughts about Jerome Powell and his turn to be a little bit more dovish of late? I think he had dinner recently with Donald Trump and Secretary Mnuchin. It seems like investors are seeing this as being a little bit of a dovish turnabout.
Well, it certainly is a dovish turnaround. The central bank in America, when this all comes to an end, historians are going to, if they're good historians, are going to realize that this whole next collapse is caused by the U.S. central bank, The U.S. central bank, after 2008, started printing money like never before in world history. Interest rates went to the lowest in world history. In some places, they went negative as other central banks followed. America's central bank alone increased its balance sheet by 500%. This all happened in 10 years. I mean, it's astonishing historically that this could ever happen. If we were talking 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and we said this would happen, people would not have believed you. They could not have comprehended, because that's not what central banks and responsible people have ever done. So the American central bank went nuts, did something which has never been done. We're all going to pay the price. The debt keeps running higher and higher. And now they're backing down again. The longer they wait to correct the situation, the worse things are going to be in the end. Of course, everybody's very happy right now. If I came to your house and started throwing around $100 bills, you'd be happy too. Well, we're all happy, but it's going to end very badly.
Hey, Jim, real quick as a follow-up. I saw St. Louis Fed, they released some research about, had we done negative interest rates, we could have rebounded a lot quicker in the economy. So kind of maybe giving some clearance for that as being possibly a policy tool in the future. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that to me sounds absolutely nuts. Do you think that's even a possibility that they would ever try that in the United States?
The reason it sounds nuts to you is because it is nuts. Would they try it in the U.S.? They'll try anything. A few years ago, Ben Bernanke said, if it comes to it, we will do anything we can. We will buy shares. We will buy gold mines. We'll do whatever we have to save the day. And it's all nuts. The central banks are supposed, the main mandate was to have a sound currency. In recent years, it was changed to have sound currency and to maintain employment. But without a sound currency, it's hard to do anything. So they're building up debt. They're ruining the currency. We're all going to pay a horrible, horrible price for this someday. Right now, we're all having a great fun. It's a good party. Don't leave yet. But boy, when we pay the price, it's going to be very, very painful for everybody in the world.
Now, if we look back at 2008 and what the dollar did during 2008, it moved up actually, and it strengthened. So what is your perspective in this next crisis? You're saying how, the Fed is printing so much money and, creating so much money and inflating the currency. But do you think initially when we see this next crisis that the dollar will strengthen, or do you think it'll be inflated away and weaken?
I just told you why the U.S. dollar is a very flawed currency, but I quickly hasten to tell you I own a lot of U.S. dollars, but I quickly hasten to tell you I own a lot of U.S. dollars right now for the very reasons you mentioned. 2008 it went up. People look for a safe haven during perilous times, during turmoil. The U.S. dollar, rightly or wrongly, is perceived as a safe haven, and mainly historic reasons it's perceived that way. So I own a lot of U.S. dollars because it's going to be perceived as a safe haven. People are going to flee to the U.S. dollar from nearly everything else, nearly every other currency. I'm just going to go higher. I hope that I will be smart enough that when it gets overpriced, to sell it. I mean, it could even turn into a bubble, depending on how bad things are in the world economy. But I hope, as I say, that this time I'm smart enough to sell it because I don't see it recovering next time around because it's being so badly debased, and it will be even more badly debased. You've already heard that the central bank of America is reversing itself. They will reverse themselves even more when the panic comes, and I don't see how the currency can survive after that. I mean, we might survive 2 or 3 more times. You know, there are not many replacements out there that people can perceive right now. But well, we will see. My present plan is that when it gets overpriced or turns into a bubble, I will sell it. But you can ask me when that happens. Who knows? Maybe I'll buy more, but I doubt it.
Hey Jim, have you been following the craziness that's going on in Venezuela? What are your thoughts on it? Are you thinking that if Maduro leaves, it'll be an opportunity for Western investors to get back in there and perhaps get their hands in the oil?
Well, right now it's against the law for Americans to invest there, so be careful. You know, we're citizens of the land of the free, but we're not very free. We're not very free to do many things that other people can't do. Buying up assets now in the collapse, I wish I were one of them. No, of course it should be an opportunity. Even if he stays, if somehow he weathers this, it's still going to be an opportunity because he has come to the realization that something's wrong. I've got to change. I got to do something new. Now, whether it's this guy or another guy, it's going to collapse. And then that is nearly always throughout history been a buying opportunity. If Americans still are not allowed to, it'll be a buying opportunity for other people who are not citizens of the land of the free.
Now, moving forward here, still looking internationally and getting back to how the economy was slowing in China this last year of 2018. We also saw the stock market in China went down quite a bit in 2018. Can you reiterate for our viewers your view of where China is headed next?
Well, I expect the slowdown in China to continue. I expect the slowdown in China to continue because the government, Beijing, has insisted that everybody cut the debt. And there's a lot of debt. You know, China didn't have debt for decades. I mean, nobody would lend money to Mao Zedong or to China. So in 2008, China had a lot of money saved for a rainy day because it had little debt. It started raining. China started spending its savings and helped save the world. But since then, China has run up a lot of debt itself. At the government level, at the corporate level, at the individual level, there's a lot of debt now. And they realize it. You know, there are a lot of strange things going, not strange, but strange, just non-economic. You know, there was a huge industry that built up of P2P lending and people lending to each other over the internet. It became just huge, gigantic. Fortunately, that is now being cut back. But that's going to continue because a lot of debt did build up. And of course, China is the largest or one of the largest trading nations in the world, and their customers are cutting back. So if you trade a lot with other countries and they're cutting back, then you're going to slow down. So there are 2 or 3 reasons that the Chinese economy is slowing. I expect it to continue because everybody, including America, eventually is going to have to slow down. And when that happens, you're going to see bankruptcies in China. I mean, and Beijing has said, we'll let people go bankrupt, which is good. It's good for China. It's good for the world. I wish America would let people go bankrupt. I wish Europe would let people go bankrupt, or Japan. But China has said we will let people go bankrupt if they mismanage their affairs. Then you're going to see it. Now, it's going to shock a lot of people, including me, and I just told you it's coming. I just told you it's going to happen. But it's going to shock a lot of people, and that will probably be a great buying opportunity
that he's
in China.
Now, if we look at what Trump said in the State of the Union address last night, we saw that he's, looking for another, he mentioned the trade deal he wants to make with China. There's this March 1st deadline on it, and he's calling for that there needs to be structural change in the trade deal. What is your perspective on how this will affect the economy in China?
Well, clearly, if trade is going to slow down, it's going to affect everybody. Even if you're not a trading company or a trading individual, your neighbors and your friends and other people are going to be slowing down. Trade wars have never been good for anybody. Nobody's ever won a trade war. Mr. Trump either doesn't know that or thinks he's smarter than history. I think he thinks he's smarter than history. He thinks he can win a trade war, that it will be good. And so it's having an effect everywhere. It's already starting. It's certainly in Europe, certainly in parts of Asia, it's starting. Oh, you can see it. Just ask questions. Stock markets all over the world are down. Economy. And by the way, this is how big recessions start. They start when people aren't watching. In 2007, Iceland went bankrupt. Well, most people didn't know what Iceland was, much less that it could go bankrupt. Then a few weeks, months later, Ireland went bankrupt. And later, Bear Stearns went bankrupt. And later, Northern Rock went bankrupt. And then by the time Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, everybody noticed. But that was a year and a half later. And that's the way it always works. It starts when we're not looking. Those sorts of things have already started in the world. Latvia went bankrupt, some Indian banks, Argentina, Indonesia, Turkey. I mean, nobody pays any attention to the Turkish economy. It's so small. But these things build up and snowball, and eventually we all see it on the evening news.
Hey, Jim, is there a possibility, I know that we talked a little bit about it already, about the dollar strengthening in the coming crisis. Is there a possibility that we may end up seeing gold and the dollar strengthen simultaneously that's happened before? Is it possible we could see that and then at some point the decoupling happen and gold just taken off?
Well, there have been times in the past when both gold and the dollar have strengthened together. There's no magic rule that says they cannot, that they have to move together, and they often don't. In 2008, for instance, gold collapsed like everything else. That usually happens when there's a big collapse. Even gold goes down. That's my expectation. I own gold. I own plenty of gold, but I haven't bought any serious gold for several years. I expect it to collapse too in the next big drop, but that will be a gigantic. If it works the way I expect, the dollar will go up, become overpriced. Gold will collapse, as it often does when the dollar gets very strong. And I, clever lad that I am, will sell my dollars at the top and put it into gold at the bottom. You see how easy it is to get rich? We just did it here in 30 seconds. Sure, God, I expect gold to go down again in the next panic. It may not. If it doesn't, it's okay. I got plenty of gold around here. But I would expect another chance to buy gold.
So that situation, though, imagine it doesn't. Or will you just let it run and that's fine? You're not going to be too concerned? Or is there a situation where you'll be in a place where the currencies are looking so bad where even if gold is still going up, you'll buy it just because it's the safest thing in your perspective?
Well, I mean, I panic like everybody else. Sure, I don't know how the world's going to evolve. I told you I think it's going to evolve. It may not, and then I will have to adjust as I go along. Sure, listen, if America and Iran go to war, I'll be buying gold at 1,600 and begging to get it. It depends on what's happening in the world. There's no magic that says I cannot buy gold. If it goes higher, I certainly will, depending on the circumstance.
Now, if we look at the gold-silver ratio, if we can get a bit into silver right now, it is historically high, around 80-1 right now. If we look back, the last 20, 30 years, it's been more like 60-1 or more close to that. But 60-1 or more close to that. But then if we look even farther, like 100 or 200 years ago, it was below 20-1. So what is your perspective on the upside potential in silver versus gold? Because some people are thinking that the ratio could collapse and silver would definitely outperform gold. What is your perspective on that, Jim?
Well, if I were buying either at the moment, I would be buying silver. It is historically much, much cheaper than gold. Uh, Gold is down from its all-time highs. Well, silver is too, but silver is down much, much, much more. So no, silver is certainly cheaper on a historic basis. You know, in the Bible, what was the ratio? 16 to 1 that gold, and that's why the Hunt brothers went broke, because they were fundamental Christians, and they said, well, the Bible says that gold has to be 16 times the price of silver. I think the number is 16 that the Bible and many religious people have said over the centuries. And so the Hunt brothers went out there and bought a huge, gigantic amount of silver, expecting the ratio to the Bible to bail them out. Well, it didn't, as you know. So anyway, yes, I expect that ratio to revert again someday. I expect silver to go up much more than gold when the time comes. And if I were buying today, I would certainly be buying silver. I'm not buying either, other than as gifts or something. But no, silver is certainly cheaper than gold.
Hey, Jim, did the Bible say anything about thou shalt not use derivatives and too much leverage in their speculating in silver?
Well, they hadn't gotten to it. If they had, maybe Mr. the Hunt brothers would still be alive and rich. It didn't get that far. Derivatives 101 didn't make it into whichever book that was.
So when you think back at those days, were you speculating in silver at that time?
Yes, we were short silver when the Hunt brothers were in that desperate run. Well, we shorted gold and silver too eventually in that desperate run. We first bought silver, and then the gigantic run up because of the hunts took place, and we wound up shorted gold at 675, and like a week later it was 875. I remember, as you can see, I remember it well. Tortured. Fortunately, it collapsed and we survived, but no, we were in the game.
That had to have been a scary trade because it was going straight up, I imagine.
Oh yeah, you know, a blow off is always blow-offs nearly always are the same throughout history, no matter what the item or no matter what the security. A blow-off just goes wild and people cannot believe what's happening. It's wonderful to be long in a blow-off. I'm not smart enough to be long in a blow-off. I'm usually shorting it, so I get killed for a while.
Hey, Jim, just demographically, when you look out, next 10 to 20 years, you still feeling like Asia has, pretty much set up for the best situation in the next 10 to 20 years when you look at, the United States compared to, say, China or India? What places are you looking at that you feel most bullish about?
Well, if you only look at demographics, you should go to Africa. That's where they're still having babies. Even though the number of babies is far reduced from what it was before, they're still having a lot more babies than the replacement rate. You have to have 2.1 babies per woman to maintain the population. Well, most of the world is far below that now. Africa's not. The Middle East is certainly not. They're still having lots of babies in the Middle East. But I mean, even India, the birth rate is down a lot. So if you're just basing your future on demographics, go to Africa or the Middle East, maybe a couple of South American countries, but nearly everybody, the demographics are not. We're not replacing ourselves.
All right. Well, Jim Rogers.
We're not replacing ourselves.
All right. Well, Jim Rogers, thank you so much for your time today. Before we let you go, I'd love if you could give us an update. I know last time you had you on, you were saying your daughter was making you famous, starring in a movie. If you could give us an update on that.
Well, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm shocked this week. This week is Lunar New Year week in Asia, as you may know, which is huge in this part of the world. Well, my daughters had the feature on a Chinese television show the other night, 20 minutes just about them. They were performing and, reciting Chinese, et cetera, the show about Chinese culture, which got huge viewership in China. And then on the night of New Year's itself, they were in 30 minutes about my daughters on Chinese TV. You go to the search engines in China this week, and my daughters are very high up. So I don't know how, but I used to be a tiny bit famous in Asia. Now my daughters are making me a lot more famous than I was because, people, there's the father. He's the father of these two girls. I don't know how it's happened. We don't have an agent. We haven't called anybody. They call us. But, the little one's in a movie. Now they're both in these huge Asian television shows. There's another group coming here this weekend to follow us around with film crew. I don't quite know how it's I mean, I know what's going on. These are blonde-haired, blue-eyed Americans who speak better Chinese than even the TV people. But I don't know when this bubble's going to pop. I hope it doesn't, but all bubbles pop, as you know.
Jim, we're gonna have to find a link to that video. We're gonna splice it in the in the interview if we can find it.
Okay, well, the Little Ones movie is coming out in July, I think it is, and the movie company says it's the first major major Chinese blockbuster, and their plans, of course, are that it's going to be wildly successful, and there will be a sequence, and then the third sequence, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe my little girl is going to be set for life, and I can sit back and go to seed or something. We'll see. I'm skeptical of all of it. To repeat, I'm skeptical. I don't know how it's happening. I don't know how long it can continue, but it's happening.
Well, thanks for sharing, Jim. Appreciate the time.
Yes, thank you so much, Jim, for your time.
Do it again. Thank you. Bye-bye.